press record. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I'm holding a copy of the book that my co-author Sandra Moore and I wrote. And I think the next part of our series here, we're going to talk about our book. And each Wednesday, we're going to post a video on the next chapter. So we'll start with the first chapter today. And I think today would be what, Sandra? The 29th of August, 2019.
Yes.
Okay. So, Sandra, we're going to talk about the first chapter, which is self-discovery. And that's where you and I, when we started to think about this book, thought that we needed to start, because I think we both agreed the first relationship had to be with self, right? Like if you've told me that life is a series of relationships and partnerships in all areas of our life, right? But if we don't, it seems to me, if we don't have the first most basic relationship with self, it's sort of like the fundamental starting place to me. So I'm going to pass it over to you on your take on self-awareness and a relationship with self.
Yeah. Well, the biggest philosophy is that knowing oneself is the key to life, okay? And everything in life is a relationship. We have a relationship with ourselves, first and foremost, and so we have to find some emotional honesty there, okay? Then we work out to a partner, okay? And you're the one that always says, what is it here? Better people make better partners. Okay, so then we have our own relationship, our intimate relationship. We have a relationship with coworkers. We have a relationship with our profession, our job. We have a relationship with money, because we are energy beings. Okay, and so I think that's really important. And so what we've really done here, and we'll just play this together, Michael, is the first chapter is a series of questions and interactive exercises for an individual to become more aware and in touch with self. That's why it's called the self-discovery, okay? So we have a lot of different questions. There's energy signature ones that give you more an awareness, but today we're really going to talk about the self-discovery process itself, okay? And so when you observe and reflect and take the time to work on self, okay, you then realize the necessity of self-change. And only when you can sit in the moment and be your own witness and your own observer, then you're not reacting or responding from, say, ego or beliefs or perceptions that you've held. You become more aware. I guess awareness is the key thing. So you become more mindful of, what am I really doing? You can go back and say, how did I handle that? How can I change? So you're becoming more conscious, okay, and more aware, sitting in the moment, not as reactive. And right now the world is so reactive because we're going through so many changes that we have to take responsibility and accountability for who we are and how we respond and react in the world. That's our own inner process. And so there's a lot of interactive exercises here. I think the ones we'll concentrate on today are the self-assessment exercises. And we have 8 different categories, okay? And each category has 20 questions in it. The process is that you are to answer all those questions yourself personally. And then if you have a partner that you're interested in, you ask them if they would answer those questions, and then you can talk about them. I think, Michael, you have a really good way of explaining why these questions are really coming from Game Changer, and so they're not that evasive. If you can share your perception on it.
I think that they will take you a little bit outside of your box. Perhaps, I think of myself as a young man, for example, and I never really sat down and reflected on who I was, what I needed. And I never really asked the hard questions because they were hard questions. And I didn't perhaps particularly even care about the answers, right? But how does that help me moving through my life to not know about myself and who I am as an individual and how to respond to external life experiences from that starting point, right? Otherwise, it's kind of like a pinball. You don't really have a strong base of sense of self, and life happens, and you perhaps flow with it here and flow with it there, and maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. But I would personally rather make difficult choices or important choices in my life based on who I am, and recognizing this is who I am, although I'm fully open to growth, personal growth over my lifetime.
Yeah.
Right? But I still need some sort of a starting point, and I happen to be it. So this book some of the exercises take you into some of the more difficult questions. They make you reflect on yourself. For example, the first exercise we have a self-awareness checklist of approximately 100 words. Okay, and we ask you a series of 4 questions. For example, the first one, pick 7 words from that list, or even if you have something there that you would rather add to your list of 7 words outside of what we have, these are guidelines, right? We did the best we could, but something else in your life might make more sense. But for example, and I don't know how many people have ever done this, but I never had. Pick 7 words that best describe how I see myself. And I remember going through this exercise and having to go through 100+ words and really trying to reflect on how did I see myself. Okay. So these are not easy to do because you have, well, that looks like a good word. I like that word, but no, it's not if you like the word. You have to get past that. You have to say, is that really me? Is that really meaningful in my life? Not just because I like the word loyalty, for example. Perhaps I'm not really that loyal, but I like the word. Well, it doesn't count. So you have to be really honest with yourself. And that list of 7 words, when you're done, oh my gosh, right? It's like, seriously, it adds up. The sum of the parts add up to the total. And you start to figure out the second question in there. 7 words that best describe how I want the world to see me. From the same list or other words you can bring in, other descriptive words. But trust me, they won't be the same as the first 7. And we have a series of 4 questions that really make you reflect on yourself, right? At the end of that, when you come out of there, it's like you're a different person. You're way more self-aware. And that helps you as you move through life.
Right. And so that's the self-awareness part. And then when we get into the next ones, which are called the self-assessment exercises, that's the ones you do personally. And that's, like I say, then if you have a friend that you're thinking of maybe building a relationship, you have them do it. Now, if they don't want to do it, I had someone that had just recently done the exercises or done half of them, and it was a female, and she was a little upset that her partner didn't want to do them. Well, obviously, she should just go on and do them herself. How interested is he in it? So you might want to think about that. So
and perhaps they're at different levels of
consciousness
frequency at this stage in their life. Perhaps that is a tiny bit of a red flag, like I'm willing to move forward with my personal growth and self-awareness, and you're not. So what's that going to look like 5 years from now?
Right. And so you're right. It's just a red flag, but it should not stop you from doing the self-awareness.
Of course not.
Right. For doing the self-assessment.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about the self-assessment exercises, and there is 8 areas, and we're going to name the area, and we'll give you one question. And each one of these areas have 20 questions, and your job is to answer them yourselves And then, like I say, go ahead. But you always said, Michael, that some of these questions are pretty tough. And so if it was just you asking, somebody might think it's invasive. But you can say the book is asking these questions because as we go through them, we'll take one question from each. There's 20. So you can see that they are tough questions. Okay, does that make sense?
Well, the interesting thing is, okay, is that, all right, let's, I'll go through this whole thing, but the first 7 words one. Now I get to know that about myself. And then if I do have a partner in my life I'm considering a long-term relationship with, I would love to know the answers to how those 7 questions affected her, what she wrote down. And I would love to share mine with her, you know. And so all the way through this, you're right. The book will ask the hard questions that I might have been a little bit shy to ask, right? Or vice versa, a little uncomfortable, right? Because it might put my partner in an awkward spot. I can answer them about myself, honestly, and then at the end of that, you get to read, you get to give your list, and you get to get theirs back.
Right.
That's the really start of some intimacy right there, that I'm willing to expose and open myself to the point where my partner gets a real look inside of me and vice versa.
Right. Okay. So if now I'm going to move to the self-assessment ones.
Right.
That's the 8 areas. So the very first one we talk about is the self-discovery, and it's called Know Thyself. That's where there's the 20 questions. Now I'm going to just pick one randomly here. This will be a good one. List the red flags that once recognized would be deal breakers in choosing a partner. So you would run, and you have to, some are just a yes or no, or some are written. So we'll take one question from each. So this is the self-discovery. So for you, Michael, what would be one red flag, okay, that would be a deal breaker?
Oh, I think anybody who abuses alcohol, drugs, any kind of an addictive nature, okay, like a self-destructive, relationship destructive behavior. There's just no way around. You don't help that person get better. If they're not really willing to do it themselves, you're in a losing battle. And so that would be one for me, Sandra. What would be one for you?
One for me would be if someone was not financially independent, where they could take care of themselves. If I had to be there to help them financially all the time, I couldn't do that. Been there, kind of done that type of thing. So I would want somebody to have a fairly good career or be in a position where I'm not having to take care of them. So that's the first one.
Like, see, what happens is it promotes conversation between the two people in a meaningful way. Now I'm finding out about you now that I know those, like, okay, that's a big red flag for her. Right?
Oh yeah, it's a huge one. So now the interesting thing is you really have to get the book to do this, because there's 20 questions in that one assessment. The second assessment, this is interesting because it's the financial and monetary relationship assessment. Okay. And so there again, I'll pick a question here. Do you carry any large debt? So it's a yes or a no.
But it will promote discussion. If I happen to say yes, and that's something generally people will keep to themselves, is their financial situation, right? But if I happen to say yes, because you have to answer this honestly, and if I was carrying debt and a large amount of it, that's something that a potential partner should know. And so I say yes, and now that's open to you. Now we talk about it. What is the debt? Is it manageable? How will it affect us in the future? These are things you should know moving into a long-term relationship.
And that's really interesting, Michael, because we've worked with some people personally where you've seen me say to them, I think it's really important that you keep your visa paid every month. And they went, that's absolutely ridiculous. That's not right. And I go, but do you realize what percentage you're paying every month on it? Okay. That's just one example. There's no right or wrong. And if you don't mind if somebody does that, or that's fine.
Well, Sandra, that's a recipe for financial collapse. There's no way around that. That's a deck of cards that's just, you might get through it this month, but eventually you wind up paying so much in interest.
Right.
You're not paying down your debt at all, and it just collapses on you.
Right. And if you are going through a hard time, that's fine. But if you can say, I've had to do this now, but I know that I'm going to do this, that's different. So it's something to talk about.
Well, would you want to get involved with an individual that right from the start, his thought process was a credit card is just a source of a loan?
Right. That's the key.
I mean, what's that tell you about the rest of his financial wherewithal?
Exactly. So then the third one here, this is a third one of the 8. It's called personal boundaries and environment assessment. So your personal boundaries, okay, is something like, for me, this is a big one. Do you take pride in keeping your environment neat, clean, and organized? Either yes or no. Okay, for me, because of my understanding of the spiritual and feng shui, a cluttered place is a cluttered mind, so you don't have clarity. And it's interesting, I can go into somebody's house and I feel that. But also, not only that, is it might look good out here, but if you open a cupboard, everything's falling out. So that tells me a lot about the person. What do you?
So, Sandra, I want to just say another question that would really be interesting to me, right? And just in this instance, I'd like to add one more.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, what type of setting would you live in? And it's a written response required. So, to me, there's an insight into myself. If I can think about, let's just say, perhaps right now, today, because let's say I'm a young couple, I don't have that option. But perhaps in 30 years, I do. Financially, we've created some net worth. Now I reflect on what kind of a world would I really, want to create for myself? What type of setting could I live in? Might be entirely different than what you think. Now, that's going to cause a problem down the road. Let me tell you, that's just going to be like, I'm ready to go in this direction because I can, and you're going to go in that direction because you can.
Okay,
so it might seem a bit hypothetical now, but it's worth keeping in mind, I think.
Okay, so that was in personal boundaries and environment.
That was number 1, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so then our next assessment, and that is our 4th one, I think. Yes, it's your personal communication style assessment.
Now, do you think this is important in a relationship, to know how each other communicate most effectively?
Well, I think it's probably one of the most important. And I think that until we know something about it, it's a lot of times people don't want, there's where emotional honesty comes in. So unless you can be emotionally honest with yourself, so many people don't want to, they're afraid of confrontation. So what they do is they will say things to appease the other person, not to cause any kind of friction. Well, there's no truth. There's no emotional honesty in there. And I think that's one of the big things with
And over time, let me tell you how that ends most often, is that the person that sort of tries to placate the other builds a resentment. And in years down the road, that explodes back on you, right? That's not a very effective way to communicate.
No, exactly. And so I'm going to choose this question for me. It's, are you more spontaneous and fun-loving, or do you tend to be more serious and pragmatic, or a balance of both? So you circle the best. And I know for me, I can only say for me, it depends on the circumstance, because basically I'm a very pragmatic, realistic person. However, I'm very spiritual. I can also be very spontaneous. But if I'm in a project and I have stuff to do, I need to go there. And so it's finding that balance. So I think sometimes people will get a different perception of me. Somebody will say, oh, she's really serious. And somebody will say, well, I find her very fun loving. And so it's holding that balance within self and being able to explain, basically, this is who I am. Okay.
Well, I think essentially what it does is you recognize the way you most effectively communicate. Your partner has that, you recognize that in her, because she will, have to do the same exercise, right? And so then you get to look at each other and go, okay, well, this is how I do, but she takes it best that way, or vice versa. And so it helps to cross a barrier so that you can effectively communicate with each other. A little bit of understanding of the other person's a big deal, right?
Right. So the next one is mind, body, and spirit for health and fitness assessment. And that's a really good one. Michael, that's for you, a big one. You might want to choose one of the questions and then I will.
To me, it is a really big one because, and I'll give you this example. When I was a young kid, and I probably was 6 years old and in grade 1, and my mother was a smoker, right? But at that age, your mother's really a major part of your world, right? And so I had watched a video at school, in health class, about what happens to a smoker's lungs. And actually they showed, I still remember it vividly, a person's lungs from the inside that were black and how it had shortened their life and covered in nicotine and tar. And I remember going home that day and just saying to my mother, look, I don't want you to die. She had no idea what I was talking about, right? But in my own mind, I wanted that human being in my life for a long period of time. And doing something bad to herself was going to shorten that amount of time she'd be in my life, right? And so once she understood what I was getting at, that day, honest to Pete, she quit smoking, and she was like a pack and a half a day person. Quit because of what I had said. So to me, my partner, I would like to know that they look after themselves, mind, body, and spirit, so that I have some duration there. It's not interrupted by self-induced health, mental, emotional problems. So this is a really important one for me because I look after myself in all areas. And so I can be around, God willing, I'll be around fully functional for many years, right? And I would like that from my partner. I guess it goes back to, self-abusive alcoholism and drug addiction. It's a recipe for disaster, right? So I think that says a lot. Sandra, pick a question that you think is important.
Well, I think for me, it's like, do you consider your wellness a lifestyle and will take responsibility for it? And I know for me, from the physical and the spiritual and the emotional thing, I've had challenges with my health, with my physicality, okay? But I still, at this stage of my life, have more energy and feel better than the average, 30 or 40-year-old, okay? What I do know is that emotionally things will affect you physically. And so if you're in a bad situation or you're not willing to see the truth in a lot of it, and Louise Hay says that if we look at what's wrong, if there's something happening in our body, okay, and that's really with the whole chakra system, we're just getting a message because our emotions will affect us physically, okay? And so having that understanding, and one of the questions in here is that, and I have to laugh because everybody is always talking about, people do too much, whatever, smoking a little bit of weed, everything out of balance. I know people that live in a delusionary world because all they do is smoke weed. But I also know, and there was a big thing that everybody was down on it, but I see the addiction to pharmaceutical drugs, okay, in older people, then a lot of it is loneliness or whatever. And just as yesterday, Johnson & Johnson got nailed, one of the hugest lawsuits in the world. So we are seeing the consciousness of the world changing. We need to take responsibility. And I will say this is my philosophy. You need to wake up and be fully responsible for yourself, mind, body, and spirit. That's your thing. And that's health and fitness. That's the assessment.
Oh, for sure, for me, a red flag would be someone who didn't care, right? Was not aware of the importance of looking after yourself properly.
Right.
So that's a big one. So moving on, Sandra, what do you think of family and child? What do you think of that one? You'll have an opinion about this.
Oh, I have got a lot of opinions on that one. Let me tell you that. Okay. First and foremost, I'm going to say right now, have you considered having children or not? Again, there's 20 questions in this, okay? So personally, because I'm a member of the Divorce Resource Committee and that, and I was a teacher for 20 years. I've raised kids. I got 5 grandchildren and worked in the prison system and the youth offender system. I do not believe that anyone should have a child unless they have to do a test, like driving a car. I hear so many, I just want to be a mother. You can't even take care of yourself. How are you going to go get a doll? Learn that. Until you can stand financially on your own 2 feet and take care of yourself and become whole, what are you doing for your children? So I think that's a big one. And I know right now a lot of young people, and I have a thing about the millenniums, but I also have respect. They're deciding we cannot have children right now. Okay, so I think that's a big one. That's a big one for me.
So this really, the idea of having a family is definitely a big, big issue to consider, and hopefully people put themselves in a situation where it's not an accident and they do have the chance to consider it, because the book is full of, certainly not against children in any way. They can be the greatest gift, but they need to be, we hope that people want these children, can look after these children, and are fully recognize the amount of effort it will take, and they will be personally responsible for these children, because children need to grow up in a loving, caring environment, and best suited by 2 loving, caring biological parents.
Okay, and I'm going to raise 2 more questions, because this is a big one for me, because I have a love of children. Do you recognize the game changer of having children? A yes or no. Do you understand the lifetime commitment of having children, the care and guidance required while raising? And that's one question. The other one is, when you do decide to have children, and I believe this should have been the first one, it's about the 7th. Do you recognize the importance of the biological family staying together through thick and thin?
Yeah, and are you willing to commit to that, right?
That's right.
Because it's not always going to be easy. You're going to have problems with your partner, for sure, over the course of the lifetime of a generation or 3. You know what I mean? Can you work through it? Are you committed? Are you willing to recognize that there's something bigger than you going on here?
I think that's the big thing, Michael. It's stepping out of ego and going into spirit and seeing a more holistic view of it. Okay, rather than it's about me, I'm the important one. Well, get over yourself, okay, when you're a parent. So the next one, this is the 7th assessment, is called Personal Recreation and Travel Assessment, okay? And I'm going to say what type of travel would you enjoy and where would you travel? Okay, now for me, it was interesting because I've had that experience with you. We did the RV and that type of thing. And I think it was a really good experience for me. But if somebody was to ask me, what I would think of it, I don't think it's a good thing for me. It's like there was a lot of, I mean, it was great, but there was challenges sometimes with the RV, and people think it can be fairly expensive when you're parking. There's just a lot of things going on. So not that it was bad, but personally for me, I had to experience it and share that. And then what about you, Michael?
Well, I think, and that's important, because what if I'm a guy that really, sees myself in an RV for 6 months of the year, traveling all over to different destinations, and then so how compatible is that going to be?
That's right. And there's a lot of people that have done that. And there's a lot of people that have said with retirement, we're going to do that. And we're going to put a lot of money out for this vehicle. And then they realize that it's not really a good thing for them. So I think that's a really good one. But we've got great questions. Each one of these categories really makes you.
I like this one here. I'll just throw this one quick.
Okay.
I remember us talking about, would you enjoy a Spanish bullfight? Yes or no? Now, it seems like a simple question on the surface, right? But if you're the type of individual who answers yes to that, okay, you're probably still a little more primal than than you are elevated frequency, little than you are spiritual, let's say, because from what I've seen on the internet, the brief minutes that I've viewed them, they really are. It's not a fun thing for the bull, right? And
for somebody, it might be.
You're a person who says you like that, you better have a partner who likes it too, because it's going to really be tough. It's like, if you're like, don't like the bloodshed and cruelty to animals, that's not going to be a very good holiday for you. That's for sure.
No. And then our very last one, this is number 8 of chapter 1, the self-discovery process in the self-assessment, and it's called the blended family assessment. Okay. And we have so many blended families right now. And again, it's a big one for me. And I think the really good one is, until you've experienced it, like I've personally experienced it myself. However, I've seen a lot of people that do, but this is a big one for me. Have you ever experienced being part of a blended family? And Michael, I think one of the things that I noticed, being with you and whatever, with your age group, there was very, very few people that went through the blended family, okay? I mean, when I went to school, and I'm a little bit older than you, but there was nobody that was divorced, okay? And as a teacher, I mean, I finished teaching 5 years ago, which was 2015, but I only had maybe 2 or 3 out of 25 students that were still in their family. And so I think that, and with you, I'm sure that you were one of the only one in your class that was experiencing a blended family. Is that true?
Yeah, I can't remember anybody else that had happened to. Probably there were, but it was not common.
No, it was not common. And so it's really hard. And so I would suggest to anybody that's listening to this and you want more information on what he shares it in the book of what it was like for him in a blended family. Yeah. And so I think that's really important.
Well, so Sandra, if we talk about this one, because I remember this question was meaningful to me. The odds are against you in a blended family, and you'd come up with some statistics that I think the odds are about 50-50 on a biological family staying together. And then the second marriage, it went up again to like 65 or 70% will fail.
Yeah.
So the odds got worse as you went through it second and third time. So the odds are against you in a blended family, and we want you to be successful. What makes you think you are different, and how would you make it work in your favor? And there's a written response required. So now we're asking people to really think about how they can, what it would take and how they can make a successful second marriage or third blended family situation, right? And making them actually think about that. Sitting down, talking together, going, okay, what's the recipe here? And we help in the book. We give you some definite guidelines and create some awareness of situations and so on. But that's a really meaningful question for people considering a blended family.
Yeah. And another thing for me right now is the whole idea of parent alienation. And I'm a member of some of the groups, and it comes out a lot. And I do have to say this, the truth will always be revealed. And so there are actual stories now, you can go on YouTube, where one parent has put the other parent down, and they've grown, and now that's right, this book, and they're 18 or 19-year-old. And the bottom line is parent alienation, and if it is proven in a court right now, you can be charged with emotional abuse, because that type of thing will affect the cognitive abilities of the child. It's not about you and your ego proving the other one wrong. This especially happens when someone has jumped into having an affair and they get a divorce or they run off to another person and then they badmouth the other person. Well, you're really hurting your own. And if you don't believe me, Lisa Lynn has a really great thing on parent alienation, and you might want to look at it. We have it in our press release. But I think that was it, Michael. I think this.
Well, so yeah, Sandra, I just want to say, to the people that are watching, thank you for sticking with us.
Yeah.
And we have a really interesting next Wednesday, right? We'll go into chapter 2, and this is about personal power, boundaries, and self-mastery. So if you'd like to learn more about that, tune in. And Sandra, where can they get this book?
This book, you can go to our YouTube channel, which you're going to see it here. You hit it, you can you can get it on Amazon. You can get it through Friesen. Chapters, Indigo has it. And guess what? It is now on audio. Okay. And so it makes a great investment for yourself, and it makes great gifts for anybody, like for somebody's birthday or somebody getting married or somebody. I've had people say, actually I had a call when I was in Calgary, a woman had ordered it and had to meet me because her daughter of 28 was going through a not so good relationship, and she ordered the book for her and said, is there anything I can say? So this is a game changer. We've moved into a whole new paradigm of new relationships where it's more about interdependency, and there's more success for you, okay? And so hopefully you'll subscribe to the YouTube channel, and Michael has shared, and thank you, Michael. I think I had a good time, and I think it'll give people, there's 11 chapters, and every one is very unique, and there's a tremendous amount of wisdom that is in there to help the individual, okay? This is about you, okay? So that you can become the best person and reach your potential, okay? Thank you so much. Just a minute here.